buildings, abandoned streets, abandoned neighborhoods, abandoned history. Almost half of the stops I cover on my Walk Beirut tour cover neglect and loss, and they're the hardest ones to bring back to life. From the largest structure in the city, like the Holiday Inn, to the most scarred part of Beirut, like Martyrs Square. These are stories that you need someone to explain, whether through narration, like traditional storytelling, or whether through art, from photography to painting. And some 10 years ago, I met Tom Young, a British painter who's made Lebanon his home, and Tom has painted many treasured relics in the city. From the Rose House in Ras Beirut, to Villa Paradiso in Gemmaise, to the Holiday Inn in the heart of the city, to the Grand Sulphur Hotel in the eastern hills outside of Beirut. And within these abandoned stories, there's a blend of beauty and pain. And Tom acknowledges that part of his mission is to expose the pain to the right level to actually begin healing some of the wounds left from the Civil War. And Tom was meant to be in the souks of Saida, and an event that was meant to take place early November was postponed. Instead, he's back in Beirut, capturing the uprising through his work. The violence, the festivities, and I got very lucky because Tom gave me some of his time at his home to reflect on what the past 2 weeks means to him. The history coming back to life, what he takes from the uprising, what he hopes for, and his perspective as someone who's called Lebanon home the past decade and has seen periods of calm, periods of violence, and he's hoping for the best, and he's capturing the moment, and I think he does it well. I'll include his website in the details box, and check out his work when it's on display. For episode 28, I'm Rani Shattah with Tom Young. This is the Beirut Banyan. We have, of course, Martyrs Square just one block away, one block west of us. You have the sea just, down the street here. Thankfully, the view is saved. We'll get into why in a bit. And it's a lovely terrace. There's fantastic artwork inside.
And on the other side, we have a view of the port.
Yes.
Mount Sanin.
You have the mountains.
On a clearer day.
You have sunrise, sunset, the sea. Doesn't get better than this.
Right.
So, with that said, I'd like your apartment.
Yeah. Sure. It is. It's a sanctuary in this city.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a sense of space and light is, very important for me as an artist, because those two things are essential to my work.
Mm.
I'm certainly lucky to be here.
Is this where most of your paintings are done at home? Do you most of the time paint here?
Actually, normally I paint from a studio. My main studio is next to Mustache Faroum in sort of
So just up the street, yeah.
And so only about 10 minutes walk, which is great in Beirut. I don't have to sit in the traffic, I can walk. But probably half of my working life is spent working on site in normally old abandoned buildings of historical note, such as the Grand Hotel in Sulphur, or the Rose House, or the Holiday Inn, where I was fortunate enough to actually be able to paint inside, and no other artist has officially been given permission to do that, and that was a great honour. So these kinds of buildings, and also I'm working at the moment in this amazing old, 300-year-old hammam in Saida's old souk. So I'm preparing a big show there, and that building was one of the biggest hammam in Lebanon.
Really?
And but it ceased to operate in 1949. So that's that's an amazing place to work in,
and
transform.
You're able to, is it more inspirational when you're painting on site and I use that term loosely here. When you're at the place you're painting, is it better as an artist,
Sure.
as a painter? Yeah.
I mean, I believe very much in a kind of spiritual energy that really lives in these places. And normally I do my exhibitions in places where nothing has happened since they were abandoned.
Right.
Normally because of the Civil War.
Yeah.
The Hammam in Zaida was abandoned for other reasons, because water was reaching people's private homes by the 1950s, and also the State of Israel was established.
Right.
And from my research, the Hammam used to be the main Hammam for the Jewish community in Zaida.
I see.
And that's a very interesting subject that I haven't really touched on yet. It's obviously very sensitive because of obviously the decades of conflict and occupation that followed.
Yeah.
The Nakba. But so that's a very interesting place. And I just. You have to be in a place. You have to really feel its energy, to connect to its history, and uncovering and sometimes celebrating, or at least honouring memories.
Yes.
If they were difficult memories.
Yeah.
Is key to my work. And by working in these places, not only does the building speak to me.
Yeah.
It's about opening myself up so that I become a medium for those memories and spirits to speak through me, hopefully, onto the canvas. That's key.
Can you just tell me a bit about the Holiday Inn? What was it like actually painting the Holiday Inn in the Holiday Inn? And I ask you because that's my favorite stop on the tour that I give, where I'm trying to bring that hotel to life.
Yeah.
But, of course, not from the inside, from outside, and just looking at the damage and doing my best within 30 minutes or a little less to actually explain what happened inside to a large audience. But what is it like being intimate with the Holiday Inn?
Well, I mean, my first feeling on entering the Holiday Inn was one of sort of elation and joy, because it felt like some kind of hallowed ground.
Yeah.
A kind of, a kind of spiritual place.
Yeah.
Because I'd spent a whole year trying to get in. Letters to the army, to the general of the Lebanese forces, to the Lebanese armed forces,
right.
the LAF.
Yeah.
So the Lebanese army, and also negotiating with the Kuwaiti Sheikh al-Sabah, and she owns 60-70% of it.
Right.
So dealing with her legal team.
Oh, so you had to pursue the original franchise owner, the Kuwaiti. Yeah. Wow.
And then she has a different opinion as to what to do with it to the son of the original developer, Roland, and who owns 30% of it, Roland Abdini, a very cultured man and architect. He cares a lot for the building, both for its architectural merits. It's a very important modernist building. It was designed by Andrei Wojciechowski, probably
Russian architect, right? It was Soviet, Polish. Sorry,
Polish,
yes.
French, and Lebanese, Maurice Hindi. So it was a double act.
Okay.
But the Andrei Wojciechowski was the chief apprentice of Le Corbusier, who is the father of modern architecture.
Right.
So this is a very important building architecturally, but it also means something to him emotionally because his father was the main developer. And so he has an emotional family investment in it. So the Kuwaiti side have a very different opinion as to what to do with it, and so it's been stuck in a kind of legal deadlock since the Civil War. And being a high building in the centre of the city, obviously the army have to guard it, and in case the wrong people get in and get to the top.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of symbolic hangover, of course, from the days of the snipers, when whoever controlled the highest strategic points in the city would essentially control the city.
Yeah.
So
you actually were interacting
loaded
with the story itself. I mean, you're getting into the property dispute, you're getting into the legalities of why it's still there.
Yeah.
So that's all just the appetizer.
That's just getting in.
That's just getting in.
And then getting letters from the British ambassador through the Foreign Office, sent to the general of the Lebanese army, and all of these, very complex negotiations.
Of course, yeah.
And getting to know, various members of the Lebanese army, brigadier generals, in order to work with them.
Yeah.
In a sense. And then so I eventually got in, and once I got in, I was like, wow, I'm in.
And when you say got in, meaning that you were going to take residency in the Holiday Inn, or you'd be in and out regularly, and
to go and paint and draw and study.
Yeah.
But I mean, my ultimate goal is to open it to the public for an exhibition, because I don't, I think it's very sad that the Lebanese public are denied access to a building of such historical importance for the national memory.
Yeah.
And a sort of transcendent cultural event inside the Holiday Inn could play a part in some sort of healing process. I'm not saying that people can be healed. That's too far-fetched.
Sure.
But even if it doesn't heal anything, it still gives people a sense, a kind of a sort of sense of ownership of their city, and through art as a kind of cultural screen. Some of these more difficult memories can be brought to life and made sense of, in a sense. And perhaps this sort of giant sort of tomb, really, it's a kind of giant skeleton in the centre of the city, can be humanised in some sort of way. And that's what I'd love to do, is a big public access exhibition, but
how close
just to get in myself was amazing, and I mean, just in terms of how I felt, I mean, I was elated, but also, I felt a sense of horror, and because I know a certain amount about what happened there.
Yeah. Did you actually? I mean, was it spending hours at a time every day?
Well, I actually just got in for a whole day.
Oh, so all of this for one day?
Yeah. And I could go back again. I mean, I've got a very good relationship with the Lebanese Army. I've done a commission for them on the border with Syria.
Okay. So you're using your wasta to get back into the Holiday Inn?
Well, that's what you have to do in Lebanon. You have to play all these games.
Even the painter has to have connections with the army to get into the Holiday Inn.
I mean, it's a very long way round.
Sure.
But you have to be very patient and very determined, and very sure what the end goal is. And
but you had one full day to yourself, and was the army overbearing at all? Were they watching and trying to?
The army were really friendly. I mean, one soldier actually took me up to the roof, so we climbed.
Good. The emergency stairwell.
24 floors. We, and I saw, still signs of torture there. There were sort of metal things from the ceiling where they used to hang people, it looks like. Some quite disturbing
I've never actually
there.
said this on recording or anything like that, but I once ran into the Holiday Inn. I snuck in, and I went up to the top, to what used to be the rotating balcony, which I'm guessing is where you saw those sort of. It's hard to describe, but yes, exactly,
marks.
yeah, and bits of the marble that where the bar once stood, and the rotating, what's left of the rotating balcony. Haunting is an understatement. It's almost like the worst elements of the Green Line stuck in time, and it's difficult to get there. You need a lot of connections and permission, but it is, I think, it's that sign, it's that symbol of can't let this happen again.
Yep.
And I think that's probably where you're speaking about the need to at least try to help people heal through their shared pain.
Yep.
People should see what happened in the Holiday Inn.
Absolutely. And now, you know, the youth of Lebanon are a generation whose parents probably didn't live the Civil War.
Yeah.
So in a sense, yeah, it is about making sure that people don't go that way again.
Exactly.
And of course now, more than ever, in the past 2 weeks, there is a danger of civil conflicts.
Well, let's talk about the last 2 weeks, because you invited me graciously into your home, and there's a stunning portrait of what's happening in Martyrs Square right now. I mean, now this is a subjective opinion. You've been here for quite some time. You're not new to Beirut. You're not new to 10 years.
13 years since my first visit.
Which
living here 10 years.
And these are, I mean, and when it comes to demonstrations, protests, or political unrest, the last 13 years have been very unstable. Yeah. So you've seen demonstrations before, and you've seen...
Well, I was here when Hezbollah basically camped out.
Right.
Took over the whole of downtown and Martyrs Square for a whole year, you know.
Yeah.
And I walked through that encampment and spoke to some of the people there. So yes, I've seen mass protests before, but
as somebody who's been here for a while, but not their whole life, where they have maybe a wider view that even maybe my parents would have, not myself. Do you feel that this time around is different for you, on a personal level?
Yeah,
I do. Why?
I mean, I think I'm so inspired by the sense of unity amongst the protesters.
Yeah.
The way that it crosses all economic and religious tribal backgrounds, it seems, obviously with one major exception, which we'll come on to later. The sense of unity and the sense of joy and exuberance, and mixed with legitimate grievance and anger at a corrupt system, and a determination to really change Lebanon for the better, and to make sure it gets, you know, the leadership that the people deserve, because from my Ajnabi perspective, you know, that you know, Lebanese more, you know, generally are so smart, intelligent, clever, talented, funny. There's a great kindness and a sense of hospitality, and people generally speak, you know, at least 3 languages, and so smart. And I just can't believe how you know, the Lebanese are so badly led by this corrupt system. And you know, over the past 2 weeks, we've seen just that people have had enough, and I never thought I'd see this day when people would just rise up and say no more. And it's very inspiring, and you know, the sense of energy in the city is just, you can touch it, you can almost feel it, and it's a very exciting time, and I'd love to contribute to this movement with my art, and that's what I think art can do. It can perhaps give a kind of cultural face or a cultural voice. And painting has this great emotional quality that perhaps photography and film, actually, they do have, but they have in different ways. But painting has a very, I think, human, tactile, but also romantic and emotional quality as a medium.
You know, I was actually going to get into this because I keep going back to the Holiday Inn, but it's not just the Holiday Inn. It's Sulphur Hotel. It's
Villa Paradiso,
Villa Paradiso, which is a story in itself, and I mean the Rose House in Ras Beirut,
and the Red House, General Spears' former residence.
So these, and I mean, there are endless photos of these places available. In Google Images, you just sort of find them, and I might be wrong, I think you're the only person who's painted these locations.
Yeah, I think. Well, the Rose House has been painted a fair amount.
In its later years, or as an abandoned.
Yeah.
Oh, it has been.
It's
Okay.
There's an abandoned ruin, but yes, yeah. I guess what I do is fairly unique. But it's not just about painting pictures of them. It's about reclaiming them.
And I wanted to ask you
for the public.
Exactly. So you are, in a way, it's your own personal mission, because no one is pushing you to help preserve collective memory in Lebanon. I mean, this is an endeavor on your own.
Yeah.
I'm curious, just what took you to this place? Because I know, and maybe it's a podcast series on its own. Maybe it's multiple episodes.
Have you got until Christmas?
But maybe just, is there something personal going on as well, that you're healing something within yourself? Because I don't know anyone who's as determined, or for that matter, as patient, especially a year to get into an abandoned hotel. The newer generation is unaware of that sort of painful past, and if they know it, it's by accident.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the holiday, and they don't really care much more.
Yeah.
I think you're doing something very, very important when one day we decide to have that collective memory, and you're contributing to it. But why are you doing it?
That's, good question. Well, I think, going back right to the beginning, I mean, I grew up in beautiful old houses in England. So I have an innate love of these old buildings. Also, I trained as an architect. My degree was in architecture at university in England, and for a term in Istanbul. So I have a particular interest in architecture and what it means, what these buildings mean for the community.
So you lived in Istanbul at some point before coming to Beirut?
Yeah, I studied there for a term at the university. But I've been to Turkey several times as a student growing up. And also, actually, Cyprus, Palestine, the Balkans, Andalusia, Morocco. These sorts of places to a certain degree where, as the cliche goes, East meets West.
Yes,
the Islamic East meets the Christian West. So, Lebanon is a classic, if not the most sort of graphic case of that exists in the world. Back to the old buildings, and I'm particularly, I think I was affected very much by certain events that happened when I was a boy. My mother died when I was 10, and we were living in a big old empty house at that point, and I just remember the sense of sort of longing and melancholy and sadness and tragedy that I felt after she died, and to some extent that sadness will always be there, but it's a way of integrating the sense of sadness and loss and the inevitable feeling and fear of abandonment.
Yes.
On an emotional level, and because my mother actually took her own life, and that makes it different. I feel, but she was a very compassionate and artistic woman. So I see my work in a way is a continuation of her, best qualities and what she would have really wanted me to do. So I feel that sense of abandonment when you walk around Beirut and you see these old buildings falling to pieces, threatened with demolition. The people have fled because of a sudden tragedy, which was the Civil War. So I think I identify with that on an emotional level.
Did you feel that when you came the first time on your first visit to Beirut? Was there an immediate reaction?
Yes,
yeah.
It was. I came in spring 2006, so before the war, just before the war, to do commissioned landscapes for a Lebanese family in London. In fact, for my mechanic, who's Lebanese.
Really?
In London, I was living in London for 12 years. So he'd done well. He built up a big business, and he wanted some paintings of his
So you stumbled into Beirut that way. The mechanic commissioned you.
Yes,
that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Because he'd seen my paintings of France and Italy and Spain and Mediterranean places, and he said, I'd love some paintings of my homeland.
What was your? I mean, back then in 2006, before the July War, when you heard Beirut or Lebanon, if you can kind of go back in time, what would have been your initial reaction to, I'm going to visit Beirut, and like, did you have any? You knew him.
And things.
Yeah, things that, I mean, you traveled in the region. You'd been, maybe you knew him, so you had some contact with Lebanon.
Yeah.
But I mean, just what was your initial response?
Well, I mean, I actually, to wind the clock back at you a bit more, I think 9/11. I think all of us that was a game changer for many people. Yeah. So I was already interested in this region because of my studies and my interest in the parts of the world, the Middle East, the Islamic world. In fact, my father, as a judge, was the only judge in the justice system in Leicester and Peterborough, Northampton, where he worked in England, to reach out to the Islamic community and try to engage with the sort of Sharia system. And so, growing up, I would go with him to the households of Muslim community leaders. So I was engaged.
Right. But that's more with Islam than Lebanon per se, right? Yeah.
But anyway, this is going way back. But when I was young, of course, the civil war in Lebanon would be on the news every night.
Yes.
So growing up, particularly around the time of my mother's death, I would watch these endless TV reports from this sort of dusty, smoky, bombed-out place called Beirut.
Right.
And I would think, what is this place, Lebanon?
Yeah.
Why do I have to hear about this? Well, a few years later, I was going to find out. So it went into my mind and my sort of heart, my subconscious, at a very early stage.
Yeah.
But I was also aware of Lebanon as being, a real sort of party place, place of.
So even then, you knew of that side to it.
Yes.
That there was a nightlife. That there was.
I knew it was very liberal. I knew it was very. It was a place of many, many colours, and so I was interested in how could this place be both, almost a kind of paradise, sort of heaven, but also be the ultimate hell at the same time.
Yeah.
And that contradiction, that coexistence of opposites, was very interesting to me, and I'd actually already started pursuing the idea of the coexistence of opposites in my work in London.
I see.
On an abstract level. Yeah. I did 2 exhibitions, basically, and the exhibitions were set in 2 spaces.
Yeah.
And one space was filled with blue paintings, and the other space was filled with red paintings.
Yeah.
So I was trying to express a sense of extreme opposites and how they come together on a conceptual, abstract level, purely in terms of colour. And then in London, I was interested in East London and West London, and they're very, very different.
So there was a natural interest already, that you were eager in that sense. This was almost the right moment to go.
Yeah. I mean, from several perspectives: artistic, conceptual, political, social, religious. I mean, Lebanon just seemed to be this fascinating place that encapsulated so much of what I was interested in. And I'd been to Morocco and Palestine and India and these sorts of places, But I also loved the south of France and Italy and,
Yeah.
and you know, Spain. And Lebanon has elements
Sure.
of all of those places put together in a completely unique way.
Yeah.
And so when I came here, I just had this immediate feeling that I knew the place. I knew. I moved into a hotel, the Mayflower in Hamra. I immediately knew where the seafront was. I walked down to Bliss Street and got a manushi, and for some reason I felt like I'd been here before. I already knew the streets. I knew the lay of the land. It was a very peculiar feeling, and
so you were comfortable right away.
Immediately, and I see. Perhaps I saw my own emotional past in the scars of the city,
right?
In a way that I didn't in London and in my own country. I felt I understood to some extent people, and they automatically understood me.
That kind of unique level of contact and intimacy and belonging, is that the background to why you've decided to stick around despite being arrested twice?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because you've been given many chances to say, you know what, it's not for me, I'm out.
Right. Well, I mean, several things happened that kept on bringing me back. And in fact, after my first visit here, I loved the place so much, I was going to come back in the summer of 2006.
Yeah.
And the day my flight was booked was the day
the
Israelis started bombing the airport.
Yeah.
So I couldn't come. I watched in horror as the news unfolded on the TV, and I decided I had to come back to do workshops for kids in the damaged areas in Dahir as soon as the war finished. So I did that, and I came back. And
when was this?
This was autumn.
Okay, so the airport's reopened, and you're able to fly into Beirut. Yeah. Okay.
And I'd made lots of new friends here, and I kept in touch with them. So I wanted to show solidarity and give my support and work with the kids who'd been traumatized, because I know what it's like to be traumatized as a child and to lose my mother and so on, and have to move house a couple of times. And, you know, that feeling of tragedy, instability, and I knew very well. And I think that these tragic events in anyone's life can be used almost to do something positive if you know how to harness the sense of tragedy and sadness and transform it. And so going to Dahir in 2006, I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. It was like Armageddon. It was like huge bomb craters. It was incredibly moving. And so I did that. But then after going back to London, I did a big exhibition to raise money for the relief effort in Lebanon, and I exhibited my paintings and the kids' paintings in London. But then I thought, I'm getting too close to this place. This is freaking me out. I don't want to get too attached to Lebanon because it's not safe.
Right.
So I was resisting it. And then an Indian friend, Bangladeshi friend of mine in London, and an English family too, they wanted paintings of India. So I thought, yes, I'll go to India. That's going to blow my mind, and I'll forget all about Lebanon. Yeah. Well, I did go to India, and it is amazing. I mean, it's a universe in itself, and so sensual and infinite. But I came back to London with my paintings of India, and this Indian art dealer called Indar Pasricha, who's since passed away, bless him, heard about my work, and he only exhibits paintings of India. His whole career was based on exhibitions about India. He said, Tom, I want to come and see your studio. So Indar came, he saw my paintings from India, and he said, these are okay, but what is this stuff? And he saw my paintings, bombed out Beirut, and the kids' work, and he said, this is amazing. I want to give you an exhibition, Tom, but for the first time in my career, I'm going to make an exception. I don't want you to go to India. I want you to go back to Lebanon.
Wow! So even your reluctance, your personal reluctance, and yet You're being driven back to Lebanon.
I went to India to get away from Lebanon, and because I went to India, I got sent straight back to Lebanon.
Wow!
And I just started to then realize, just stop, resisting. Just go with the flow, and pursue. If you feel that you love this place, just keep going with it, and let it unfold, and it just carried on unfolding. I did the show in London. It didn't go that well because of the economic crash that happened in 2008. But then a Lebanese artist friend, Zaina El Khalil, visited my studio in London. She saw my work and she said, "Wow, you've got to exhibit this in Beirut." So she put me in touch with a gallerist, Ida Shafan, and Ida loved the work, and she said, "You have to come to Beirut, bring all these paintings over, and I will buy them up front."
Oh wow!
In cash. And
wow.
This was I was getting in debt in London because of the crash, and it was a real struggle. And here was a gallery in London.
So it's not just an emotional reason anymore. It's almost like a professional reason. It's an economic reason. Yeah.
I'm also an economic migrant.
You're the only one. I hope you're not on the list of. No. We're not going to need your bank records. Hopefully not.
But I thought, wow, yes. So Ida then bought all the paintings. They started selling, and she said, "You have to come and live here for about 6 months and do a show here." This was 2009, 10. Essentially never left.
But is it something that changed over time? So by 2011, 2012, aside from that brief period where you had to leave, this was becoming home.
Yeah.
But did it evolve into something else? Because anyone can sort of commit themselves to another country and feel at home. But as your belonging here, did it take on a different meaning over time, that you felt that you were now contributing yourself to Lebanon's story?
Yeah, yes, I guess. I mean, as an artist, I want to be in the place that inspires me the most. And Lebanon does inspire me more than any other place. And so the source of inspiration is here. And I felt that I could shine here. Yeah. Whatever my star is, it shines the brightest here. Yeah. And I want to keep doing that. And I feel, I suppose, a sense of meaning. I mean, that's what everyone's looking for in their lives. And I felt like, as an artist, I can really contribute something here.
You did something magical, and the Rose House story is relatively well known. It's still there, unfortunately abandoned again, but it's, but what is less known...
At least it wasn't demolished. Yeah.
At least it wasn't demolished, that's true. But literally just up the street from your home in the middle of Jummaizi, whether it was intended or not in its initial stage, you helped preserve a part of Beirut. You preserved the building through your art. Do you feel like this is more than just a personal accomplishment, that there's something deeper here, that you, beyond preserving your view to the sea, you actually saved a family story, and you saved a bit of Beirut's story in the process, and to the point that it's now that will not be brought down. It's an ambassador's residence. Yeah. So Villa Paradiso, on an emotional level, and maybe also on a professional level, did you know when you started painting and you were in there physically that you would help save this building?
I didn't know that would happen. I mean, I must say I played a role in it. I mean, the architect who owns it, Remy Fagali, without his vision, it wouldn't be what it is today, I have to say, and his father, Labib Fagali. But I definitely played a part in bringing it alive. Yes. And also, because it became a cultural space and an exhibition centre, because of my intervention, that's when the EU ambassador, Christina Lassen, saw it, fell in love with it, and then they invested in further renovations, and it has been preserved.
So it required a bit of luck in that sense, that she saw it too, and she wanted it to be the residence as well. But I mean, did you know that you were on the verge of saving, not just a building, but a part of Beirut's story? And
well, exactly. I mean, all these buildings contain these amazing stories, usually family stories. In the case of the houses, although in the case of the Grand Sulphur Hotel and Holiday Inn, it's a national story, because hotels obviously are not domestic spaces, and the hammam inside it as well. They're public community spaces. So, but the houses have this intimate family history, and the families whose belongings I found, all their diaries and letters and photograph albums and perfumes and so on. The Armenian family, the Bulumians, and I discovered their story. So that was fascinating, because I got a real insight into the Armenian Lebanese connection. And I know a fair amount about the Armenian situation, because one of my closest friends in Beirut, Jackson Alice, is American Armenian, and also my father, by complete coincidence, although there are no coincidences, having retired as a judge, is now a scholar of Armenian history, and has been doing a PhD in research about the last days of Armenia before the genocide. So I was, it was an amazing project in a way, because it brought me closer together with my father. Of course, and that's a lovely. We speak about the tragic loss of my mother, but I have to remember my father too, and it's lovely to collaborate with him. It was
thrilled to watch you together, because I was there in the opening. I think it was the opening night, where he was in the building. He was in the home, giving a lecture
about the family story that I uncovered, and his own research, and weaving them together. I mean, I tracked down the family who used to live there, whose belongings I found, and they'd fled Lebanon during the Civil War, at the beginning of the Civil War in the late 70s, because the eldest son was shot, and the building was being fired upon and occupied, so they fled. Most of them went to New York, but I was able to put them in touch with my father, so they could tell him their story.
I see.
And for the Armenians generally don't have the kind of representation that the Jewish community has in Hollywood, for example. But it's generally only Armenians that tell the Armenian story. But I think it meant a lot for them to have a British judge tell the story of the genocide. Because I think that was an important, and a British artist too. So I became great friends with the family, and they were so appreciative of what I did, and in fact I've just been to Armenia to a wonderful wedding of the great grandson of the family, whose belongings I found, and we've become great friends. And after doing the show in Villa Paradiso, I went to New York to return the belongings to the family, and they all came to the show in Manhattan. Where I did a lecture and an exhibition, and they bought paintings to show their appreciation of their old ancestral home.
That's incredible.
And they got all of the belongings back. And so, yes, I think, although I'm very interested in these places from an architectural perspective, in the end it's the human story that really matters the most.
Is it this blend of an architectural skill, in a sense? You studied it, and you may have ended up an architect had you not pursued painting. Is it this blending of both, this ability to portray your emotions through paint, and having that knowledge of the architecture of a building? I mean, is that the magic here, that you have both, and you're able to appreciate, you're able to deliver on both sides?
Yes.
So in other words, landscape in itself is not. I mean, you were commissioned initially to do something which may not have required the architectural background, But you're in a city that is celebrated for its architectural diversity and chaos, and you're painting it.
Yes.
Is that what's going on?
Oh, exactly. It's a real synthesis of the two. The work is about a sense of place and identity, and what that place means on an emotional level.
Yeah.
In terms of the history of a place.
Yeah.
And bringing alive memories, not just for those older generations who lived these times, but for the younger generation who are cut off from the memory and history of Beirut.
Yeah.
So it's some of it's about nostalgia and looking back at the glory days and some very difficult times too. But it's about the future too, and galvanizing a sense of togetherness, unity, and identity amongst the Lebanese youth.
Yeah.
Because buildings on their own, and also history textbooks on their own, they don't really mean much for most young people.
Completely agree.
But if they can walk into a place and see these wonderful old buildings and enter these magical structures and get a sense of where this history happened.
Yes.
That's how you do it, or that's how I do it, certainly.
So you have recently been attending the demonstrations in Martyrs Square, and before we started recording, you showed me your most recent contribution, which is a painting of what's happening right now. And you said something earlier, and I find this very interesting, that you are most of the time you're entering places that have been abandoned for quite some time, and then you're connecting to I'm mostly Civil War era abandonment, but not necessarily. The Hammam is another example. Martyrs Square is alive, and you're portraying a part of the city that is currently emotional and celebratory and almost like a festival. I give the tour every Sunday, and I try my best to bring what is happening right now to life. And I think I got it right as a sort of one-man show. Of course, I'm upset I can't give the tour right now because of what's happening. At the same time, I'm really happy I don't need to give the tour because it's happening on its own. The story of Martyrs Square is alive.
It's being written.
It's being written, exactly. And you know what? It's that part of the city that is continuously rewritten, and it's consistent. The painting that you are doing right now of Martyrs Square, is it that it is an abandoned part of Beirut that is now full of energy?
Yes, that's a very interesting point. I've always been interested in Martyrs Square as an architectural space, because it is like a sort of gaping hole, really, in the heart of the city. Which, because of the Civil War
and horrible urban planning and
just dreadful mismanagement of the reconstruction, and but because it's empty and disused and abandoned, it can host movements, such as the Cedar Revolution 2005, the Hezbollah sit-in in 2007-8,
the You Stink movement a few years ago,
and now the most spectacular of them all, a show of national unity. I think that no one's ever seen before. It's an absolutely seminal moment in the history of Lebanon, and to witness that happening literally only a block away from where I live, I can hear it at night and during the day, is incredibly inspiring. And my interest in exploring history in my work just got current. It's like
right.
It's like, here we go.
I'm going to guess
to the present.
That painting could not be done without the current revolt.
I've been painting pictures of the crowds, but also people burning tires that I witnessed. Actually, at the beginning of the revolt, of the uprising, when I was driving back from Saida, and because all the big roads were closed because of the fires, I had to drive through Onsite and Dahi. And that's when I thought something extraordinary was going on, because in Azai at night, I witnessed this huge street party and burning tyres everywhere.
Yes, yes.
And they were playing, thumping hip-hop and sort of Arabic tunes out of a sound system and waving only Lebanese flags.
Yeah.
And I thought, wait a minute.
Something's different.
I thought this was a Hezbollah area. And that struck me as rather strange. Now, as we certainly saw yesterday when all Hezbollah thugs attacked the protesters, as they have done sporadically throughout the last 2 weeks. It's not all of the Portia who are cheering for Lebanon.
Exactly.
But in Azai they were. And
Yeah.
I thought, wow, what is going on? This is surreal. And that was almost more instructive than what's been going on at Martyrs Square.
Yeah.
So I began painting that. But I came back to Beirut. We postponed the cider project till probably next spring, and it's just been electrifying. I mean, emotionally, artistically, and I feel like, what can I do to contribute? And so I'm motivated to paint what I see every day. There's no time to lose, because with social media and so on, and the help of, in fact, L'Orient Le Jour published a piece about my work. Through the media, I can contribute something to the spirit of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Whilst not being Lebanese, it's not necessarily my battle to fight, but as an artist, I can contribute something.
What's interesting is, there's many ways to, in a way, document the moment and capture it, and this is, of course, the probably the most artistic way of expressing emotion. And I think what's always incredible, and I say this as someone who's too familiar with what's happening, your painting of the tents and the in a way the determination to hold on to Martyrs Square. It took 12 hours at most, could be even less, for those tents to be ransacked, burned to the ground, and then brought back up as if nothing happened. And your painting next to it of the fire and the demonstrations, but on the other side, the protests against the protests, and you said the thuggery against these protests.
Yeah, the resistance.
The resistance.
The so-called resistance.
Can happen also within hours. It can escalate to a tipping point, but quickly back down as if nothing happened. And that, to me, I think is impossible to explain to someone who hasn't been here for a while, because it's so fast and it's instant, right?
Yeah.
It's instantaneous. And I think this is why actually when I first stepped into your studio inside, I like that they're the same. Both can happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully the tents stay, and hopefully the protests in Martyrs Square yield tangible results.
Yeah. I think possibly that's what the movement needed, was some outrageous thuggery to actually sharpen and focus the minds of the people who were trying to do something positive. Yeah.
Because there was no sectarian slurs thrown on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's powerful.
I think the success, the ultimate success of the movement depends actually on turning really against those who wish to derail what is a very positive movement.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I was actually started the painting yesterday morning. I went down, and I'd been going down to the tents and meeting the protesters and talking to them and taking photographs and sketches. And I was planning the painting already. And then I went down to the tents to verify a few architectural details on a technical level. And that's when it kicked off on the ring.
Right.
So I walked up to the ring and I saw a big fight between Hezbollah and the police and the protesters. So I actually witnessed in real time what was happening. I was there.
Yeah.
I saw, and only last Friday I was in the crowd in Riyadh al-Salah when Hezbollah attacked us, and a rock flew past my ear, and it was very scary, because I thought if that rock had been 30 centimeters, that would have hit me in the head.
Yeah.
So when you see that level of violence and aggression so close up, that it kind of motivates me to support and through my paintings,
Yeah.
But it's actually very frightening when you see it so close.
Yeah.
And I was quite shaken, and I've been trying to transform that sense of fear into something beautiful to help what's happening. But I went down to the tents in the morning. Then I saw the fight on the ring. Then I came back home. I turned on the TV, and I couldn't believe my eyes, just smashing it to pieces.
Yeah.
And the police and the army were just standing by, doing nothing. And I was horrified. And when I saw, on LBC and TV, when the thugs had left, I went straight back down.
Yeah.
As soon as I could, and helped them rebuild the tents. So I didn't, at that point, I didn't just want to paint it. I actually wanted to go down to show solidarity and physically help them put the tents back together, and then come back.
Yes.
And then paint the picture of what it was in the morning.
Right.
So so not only actually help rebuild it with my own hands, but actually then paint what was now a memory of yesterday or this morning.
Right.
So in a sense, my practice of painting memories of what was before it was lost,
And you yourself are rebuilding that memory physically by reconstructing what was lost that morning.
Yeah,
and in a way,
clearing up the rubbish.
And clearing up the rubbish.
And just being there, I think, just on a sort of just as a presence, as a encouraging. Yeah. Just trying to give positive energy and hug people down there, because the people in the tents were shell shocked.
Yes.
And some guy got his leg horribly broken, and they were really traumatized. And I just wanted to give them a hug and just sort of do something and hand out some Scotch tape because the tent poles were snapped. Yeah. And things like that.
I think, Tom, there's a few constructive ways to open wounds and get something better as a result. And one of them is maybe going into the wound, whether it's an abandoned home or the site of a riot, or even for that matter, seeing it and trying to fix it and heal it yourself. I think very few avenues are available to access pain and then yield something better. And whether or not you're healing your own pain as a result, I think Lebanon's very lucky to have someone like you as committed to the future of this country. And I say this as a fellow storyteller, albeit without any painting skills, any talent whatsoever. I think memory is much more important than we all realize. And collective memory in this country is even more important. And with that, I really thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Ronnie.
And as I left his home, Tom went back to painting the events in Martyrs Square. And we've now entered the third week of the uprising. And at night, the ring was closed. This morning, it was reopened. There are still calls for more figures to resign. And for the first time since the uprising began, banks officially reopened this morning. It remains unclear what the next cabinet will look like. But it's clear that even if the number of protesters has declined the last few days, the political consequences of the uprising is only beginning. If you're enjoying these episodes, please consider a contribution through Patreon. The link is in the details box. And if you want to stay updated with new episodes, simply subscribe to the podcast from your preferred platform or find us on our YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm Ronnie Shatah. This is the Beirut Banyan.